I'm trying to figure out whether it's a good idea for the USA to take over Gaza. Where do I even start? First off, I know that Gaza is part of the Palestinian territories, right? And there's been a lot of conflict between Israel and Palestine over the years. So, if the US were to step in and take control of Gaza, what would that mean? I guess one thing to consider is why the US might want to get involved. Maybe they're trying to stabilize the region or protect their interests in the Middle East. But then again, the US already has a complex relationship with Israel. I remember hearing about how much military aid the US gives to Israel, so would taking over Gaza complicate that? Another thing is the political situation in Gaza itself. There's Hamas running things there, and I think they're considered a terrorist group by some countries, including the US. So, if the US were to take control, what would happen with Hamas? Would they just take them out, or try to negotiate? That seems like it could lead to more violence. Then there's the issue of Palestinian sovereignty. Wouldn't taking over Gaza undermine any chance for a Palestinian state? I thought the general idea was that Palestinians should have their own country, but if the US takes over, maybe that's not possible anymore. Plus, how would the international community react? Other countries might see this as imperialism or neo-colonialism, which could strain diplomatic relations. Economically, Gaza is pretty dependent on aid and external support. If the US took over, would they invest in rebuilding infrastructure and creating jobs? That could be positive, but it's also a huge responsibility. Managing such a complex area with its own set of problems might stretch any country's resources thin. Security-wise, controlling Gaza could make border management easier for Israel, which is a big plus. But then, again, the US would have to deal with the same kinds of security threats that Israel does, like terrorism and cross-border conflicts. Plus, there are groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon that might not take kindly to an American presence nearby. I also wonder about the legal aspects. International law recognizes the Palestinian territories as occupied by Israel, but if the US were to take over, would that change anything legally? It seems like it could create a whole new set of legal challenges and maybe even violate some international agreements. Another angle is public opinion both in the US and globally. Some might support taking over Gaza to protect civilians or stabilize the region, while others might see it as an overreach of power. Politically within the US, different administrations have different policies towards the Middle East, so a move like this would probably face significant debate and opposition. There's also the question of long-term commitment. Taking over Gaza isn't something that could be done quickly. It would require sustained effort, resources, and political will. The US has shown in other parts of the world that winding down involvement can be tricky, so starting a new one might not be without risks. I'm trying to think if there's any historical precedent where a country took over another region with similar issues. Maybe places like Iraq or Afghanistan come to mind, but those were different contexts. The challenges of governance, security, and economy in Gaza are significant enough that it could be an even bigger. In summary, while taking over Gaza might seem like a solution to some problems, like stopping conflicts or providing aid, it seems like it would bring on a whole host of other issues related to international law, political backlash, economic strain, and security risks. It's probably not a straightforward answer whether it's a good idea, because there are so many variables and potential consequences. The question of whether the USA should take over Gaza is complex and multifaceted, involving numerous political, legal, economic, and security considerations. Here's a structured summary of the thought process and conclusion. 1. Geopolitical context. Gaza is part of the Palestinian territories, with ongoing conflicts between Israel and Palestine. The US has a strong relationship with Israel, which complicates any direct involvement in Gaza. 2. Hamas factor. Hamas, classified as a terrorist group by some nations, controls Gaza. Taking over would involve dealing with this group, potentially leading to increased violence. 3. Palestinian sovereignty. Such action could undermine the goal of Palestinian statehood and face international criticism as neo-colonialism. 4. Economic challenges. Gaza's economy relies heavily on aid. U.S. involvement might require significant investment in infrastructure and jobs, but would also entail managing a complex and strained economy. 5. Security concerns. While controlling Gaza could ease border management for Israel, it would expose the U.S. to security threats similar to those faced by Israel, including terrorism and regional conflicts with groups like Hezbollah. 6. Legal considerations. International law considers Gaza under Israeli occupation. U.S. takeover might violate international agreements and create legal complexities. 7. Public opinion and politics. Involvement could face opposition both domestically and internationally, with debates over U.S. foreign policy objectives in the Middle East. 8. Long-term commitment. Managing Gaza would require sustained resources and political will akin to challenges faced in other regions like Iraq or Afghanistan. Conclusion. Taking over Gaza presents potential solutions but also introduces significant risks and challenges across various domains. While it might address some issues like security and aid, the broader implications for international law, diplomacy, economy, and long-term commitment make it a highly complex decision with uncertain outcomes. Therefore, it is not straightforward to conclude that such an action would be advisable without careful consideration of all factors.